We've got it.
I think we have it. Oh,
Hi,
Liz, it's good to
everybody.
see you.
Good to
Welcome,
see you.
welcome back to our Teller home. It's been a
Oh
little
my
while.
gosh. How are you?
I am good. I wanted to ask you the same. I've heard you say a lot of times you've actually been doing quite well during this pandemic, in spite of how the deep empathy you feel for many that are not. But you're doing well. How are you today?
I am doing well today, sweetheart. I'm good. It's been yeah, I mean, winter's coming and that's a little alarming because it's like,
Yeah,
ooh, winter's coming, COVID rates are on the rise, everybody's going to be going back indoors again. And, there is that little tremor of like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do
yeah.
this? It's going to be a long, cold winter. But yes, I've been well. I'm not one of the people that anybody needs to be worrying about. So I'm good.
Good, good, good.
How is dropping off your kids today? Did you cry?
It was good. No tears today. I was
Oh,
sobbing. I was texting Liz yesterday, and we were going to go live yesterday, and I was kind of grateful it didn't work out because I was like, and it
oh,
wasn't sad. It was just momentous. I've got 4 kids, and it was my little kindergartners that were going, and I was also just thinking it's been 8 months since we've had kids in school and COVID and all these things. It just felt like this very momentous kind of thing. But
oh,
we're doing really well today.
good,
So,
good.
Liz,
Yes, my
I
dear.
I know that you don't need an introduction. We all know and we love you and you're known for all the things. But I wanted to give you an introduction
All the
anyway.
things.
All the things, all the things. I even heard you saying on an interview you'd done a talk with like medical health professionals about your opinion on like where things are going and I don't know in the health world. And I was
They
thinking,
asked, yeah, they asked, and I was like, this
I love
novelist
that.
isn't really qualified to give medical advice, but sure, I'll take a swing at the question.
It's because we
But
trust. We're like, I think Liz knows. I think it's
uh,
kind of like that dad feeling where you're like, my dad just knows all the things. I think that's how we feel about you.
thanks. I like being your dad, Jill.
Yeah, you can be my dad, Liz. I like that. So I'm going to introduce you for the things that I know and love you for, and I think many of our tellers will relate. So Liz is a fellow book lover and a writer through and through. Never were you not a writer. You are a brilliant short story writer, and if you haven't read Pilgrims, you should. She is not a great speller, and we love that about you.
And you know what? Azure and the Teller community doesn't make it any easier because they keep changing the spelling of Teller.
I know,
It's hard. It's
I
hard
know,
for me. And then they put punctuation in the middle of it. It's
I know.
confusing. Poets make a hard thing, spelling, harder still.
They do. And then Azure, as a poet, makes it extra hard. I think
Yes.
sometimes for fun. You should see some of our communication. And Jill, you didn't send that to the right email again. And I'm like, I can't remember if it's tell her, tell her. I know. But we love that about you. It makes us feel less alone. Liz is a sister. She's the best friend of Rhea, as well as the love of Rhea's life, and vice versa. She's the dear friend of our beloved Azure, as well as the dear friend of Simone Gordon, the blackberry godmother, whom I deeply admire. She's a supporter of women, and I don't say that lightly. If you go to Liz's Instagram, you see her creating space, giving platform to, and lifting up voices of brilliant women that we are all lucky to get to be introduced to. And I love that about you. And she's a novelist, a biographer, at one point in time a journalist, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, the life coach everyone wishes they had, and it's true. And you have been my personal mentor for the last decade plus, unbeknownst to you, but my mentor all the same. So welcome.
I think you've been doing great, Jilly. I just want to say, I
Oh,
know we haven't checked in ever, but I
yeah,
want you to know I'm proud of you and you're doing all your assignments and you're doing wonderfully well.
I am a really good little worker bee. Just give me
Good
the
little
assignments.
worker
I will
bee.
do them.
And I also want to
Thank
say
you.
I see everybody saying hello from all over the world, and this is just a big general hello to everybody. I've just been seeing names and locations come up right now, and it's so
Oh,
wonderful. If we were to have a global plague, we were so lucky to have a global plague at a time when we all have intercontinental telephone communication
I know.
devices that we can do this with. So,
I
so
know.
hello to everyone, and thank you for joining us. And I hope you're all okay.
Oh, I love this. I love the community that is drawn around you, and I love the community here in Teller. They are from all over the world, and it is really fun. I've thought many times my whole life I grew up with dial-up internet, and I'm like so grateful that, well, actually, that was my later years. My earlier, there was no internet, and I'm just grateful this is not that time when we're stuck in this.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to mention something to you about Rhea, if that's okay. Um,
I always love
so
talking about Rhea.
good, good. I know that about you. So I was prepping for a conversation and I had a couple moments of deep insecurity and I was feeling like, oh, Azure has misplaced her faith in me. And
Oh.
I felt that I was doing some of that negative self-talk and just telling myself, you're just a mom and what are you doing here? You're out of your league. And then the core feeling was I don't belong. But I kept prepping anyway. And I remembered an interview you did with Reya. And it was when you were interviewing her for her book, Harley Loco. And I'm watching the interview while looking at other stuff. And she says this line, and she says it in that like Reya voice. And I stopped everything I was doing and I listened. And this is what she says. She says she's talking about someone trying to make her feel small, and she handles the situation. And then she's talking back to herself, and she says, the rest of the evening was a wonderful experience because I showed you, Head, that when I'm invited somewhere, then I probably belong there. People don't invite me for the things that I lack. They invite me for the things that I bring.
Yes. I knew that's where you were going.
That.
And I was like, bring it, Jill. Like, bring it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I loved when
you belong at every table that you sit, that you are sat down at.
You belong. You belong. When she said it, I felt total peace wash over me, and I haven't felt insecure since. And I was like, thank you, Reya, for helping me out. So, and I think that's her power. I didn't know her in her life. I only know her through you. But when you talk about that, I'm like, I can see what Liz is saying. I can feel that power from when she was here and beyond.
Whenever she walked into the room, I was like, oh, I'm safe. Reya's here. And it wasn't just that. It was like whenever she walked into the room, I was like, oh, everybody is safe because Reya's here, because the alpha is here. And the job of the alpha actually in a wolf pack is not to dominate, control, and brutalize everybody. The job of the alpha is to make the rest of the pack safe. And I always knew that, whatever shenanigans anybody got up to, in the room, if people were acting out or acting up or misbehaving, like Reya would handle it, and she would handle it in such a way that all the people were protected. And if anybody needed to be put in their place, she would do it. Like it was just, I always just felt this wave of, it's what I missed the most about her. But I also feel that after she died, my friend Martha Beck said, you've become a creature that is kind of half Reya, half Liz at this point. And I feel that. I feel like I'm so much stronger now than I ever was. And I'm able now, and I see other people be able to find the thing that she, the spirit of her, what she was saying, which is like, come on, motherfuckers.
That's how she would say it.
Yeah. Don't fierce love and protection.
With like the most love.
Exactly.
I love that. That's my mom has always held this belief that our loved ones that pass on can do more for us often on the other side than they can here, and they can have a broader reach. And I can see that true. I see that. I love too. You said something along those same lines. You said, I think it was in Big Magic that you said this. The arrogance of belonging pulls you out of the darkest depths of self-hatred, not by saying I am the greatest, but by merely saying I am here. And I love that. I love that those two pieces of advice. I'm like, all right, we can do this. And I think if we can all just have you and Reya playing in our head, we will be very confident women, and it'll be great. It will serve us all. So I wanted to ask you about the people that have influenced in your personal life. I know some of the authors you've loved that you haven't met, like Walt Whitman, but I want to know some of the people in your personal life that have influenced you. And I wanted to start with Reya. I know how she's influenced your life, but I don't know that I've heard how she's influenced your writing. And I imagine she's had to have.
Oh my gosh, you went right into it, Jill. So the reality is that our relationship with each other and the way that we encouraged each other, because we were friends for almost 20 years, there
Right.
was this long, deep foundational friendship before we became partners. And then we became partners long before we became lovers. We were really each other's person for a long time. But the way that that relationship operated is that she gave the interpersonal, emotional strength that I lacked, and I gave her the creative strength that she lacked. So that's how it worked. She wasn't ever my creativity coach. I've never really needed one.
You've been pretty solid in that
I'm
department.
sorry to say it, but it's like this weird preternatural thing. Like for my entire life, that is the one place where I have just always been confident and always been disciplined and always been certain. And I think sometimes if you're very lucky, the universe might give you one corner of your life where things are not incredibly difficult.
Right.
It doesn't mean I have to work hard and it's challenging, but it's not an ordeal. Creativity is not an
Right.
ordeal for me. And I don't tend to have to go to other people to be like, help me through this.
You haven't needed muses and different.
No, I mean, I get inspired by people, but like I got creativity, like I
Yes.
got that. This is my world. Here's what I can't do. Here's what traditionally I have not been able to do. Handle interpersonal, emotional, intimate relationships without becoming enmeshed, codependent, terrified, people pleasing, all of
You're
that
describing me.
self-assurance. Yeah, all of
Mhm.
that self-assurance that I have on the page, all of that self-assurance that I have with creativity, where I trust it, it trusts me, I know what to say, I
Mhm.
know when to say it, I don't panic when it's not working, like all of that
Right.
that I can do on the page, off the page in human relationships. I can lose that very quickly and I can abandon myself very quickly and I can get very panicked and I can get very frightened and I can get very young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very young. And Rhea had that. Like Rhea, like people didn't scare her. There was no altercation she was frightened of. There was no darkness in anybody's life that scared her because her own darkness was so huge and she'd faced it that like your shit didn't
Right.
frighten her at all.
You're not going to scare her off.
She would go into any arena. She would battle to the bloody death with somebody and then hug them and love them afterwards and be cool, so, but she had tremendous creative insecurity. She had we were just opposites. We were mirror images of each other, and she always felt like a fraud. She always felt like an amateur. She felt like she didn't have the right to produce creative work, even though she was very gifted in a number of ways. But even the fact that she was gifted in a number of ways, she was a good musician, she was a good writer, she was a good filmmaker, but she didn't feel like she was great at anything.
Right.
And she had crippling insecurity around creativity, and she was her own worst enemy. Look, we are all our own worst enemy, but in some of
Yeah.
us, it's just more obvious where,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so what we did was prop each other up in these different ways, in these different ways. And so I would prop her up like I really sat down. I was like, "You're going to write this book. I'm going to help you write this book." And then she would prop me up when I had to have a difficult conversation with another human, and I'd be like, "I don't know how to do this." And she'd
Well,
be like, "I'm going to give you a script. Call him up, tell him this, and then
I
so
love
it
that.
was just so honestly, that wasn't what she filled in my life. What she filled in my life, but now I've sort of, before she died, I remember I would say to her constantly, I need to download you because I need to be able to access that strength and power because I truly do not know how I'm going to survive without it. And I feel as though the download was effective. And I think love is the download. The
I
people that
think
we
so.
love, as you love, you download them.
I think so.
So if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I think there's something really beautiful about, I have no judgment on how people grieve or how people deal in the aftermath of not having their person right here physically with them. But
Yeah.
I do think something that serves you is that you talk about her and you find joy in talking about her.
Hang on, my ear fell out.
Oh,
Go on.
can you hear? I do think something that serves you is that you talk about her and that you enjoy talking about her. And I feel like that helps to keep that download active and to keep her presence there. And then I also think she was such a life force that her presence is probably just there, here, everywhere,
I think
around.
it's different for different people when they pass away. I mean, death is obviously the great mystery, but there are people in my life who have died and I felt like they left. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
died and they were like, check, please, out.
Yeah.
And there's no vibration left remaining of them. They almost kind of couldn't get out of here fast enough. They were like, I'm done. I hated it. Like, I'm not coming back, or I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm finished. I did my job. I'm not coming back. I have a couple relatives who lived to a very old age, and I felt like when they left, they really were done. Rhea's life was interrupted by death at a point when she was at her most alive, and I think she just chose to stay near, and to stick around. So I feel her. I feel her to be very available.
So you feel
um,
like it's more on her end that
Kind of
you
both,
have
but
that
like she
availability.
hated being left out of things more than anything else in the entire world. So a sense that
Oh,
I
I
had
love
and
that.
is that her spirit, when I talk about her, I feel it polishes her spirit and she likes that. I
Oh,
feel she
I
likes
love
it.
that. I love
Um,
that.
yeah,
Oh, I think that's so great. I love that. I love when you talk about Rhea. Yeah, I just love her through you. She's incredible.
thanks, Jill.
I want to ask you too about our dear friend Azure. I wanted to ask you mostly, not even necessarily her influence on your writing, but I just want to know. I know how you two met, and you and I both love Azure, but you have been friends with her for much longer than I have. And I know how you two met, but I want to know um, how, like, why it was you met, and then you two were like, yeah, yes. And also something you love about her because she can't stop you right now, which I think is great.
Ah,
She can attempt in the comments.
we I would like to say a lot of really elegant things about the respect that I have for Azure as a poet and as an activist. But what I really want to just tell you is that I love acting up with her so much. Like it's so fun. It is
We can
so
feel it from you guys. That's why it's fun to
fun.
watch.
It is so fun. And what you see when we act up online is
Hmm.
actually very tame compared to what happens when we act up.
We're getting just
And
as hey.
most
I
of
can
our
believe
most
that.
of our text messages and exchanges end with one of us saying in capital letters to the other one, "Why are we like this? We're so incredibly inappropriate."
Oh, I love that.
There's I think that there's a great deal of healing in that we can talk about serious things in a light matter. I think that's without diminishing the incredible seriousness of it. So
For sure.
allyship is a word that gets used a lot. I would never proclaim myself an ally because I think it's insulting. I think you don't get to say that about yourself. Other people get to say that about you.
Right.
But you absolutely should not walk around saying that you're an ally. Uh, the people who you're,
I
no, just
shouldn't put
don't.
it in my Instagram profile, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, it's don't
Okay.
and you're allowed. It's like saying that you're a good lover or that you're a great friend or that you're a great cook. You don't get to say that. Other people get
Someone
to choose.
else.
Other
They
people
get to
get to tell
taste
you
your
that.
food and then
Yeah,
say, you're good.
exactly.
Yeah,
And yet, in the allyship that we do have with one another, um, I think that those relationships, especially interracial relationships, in this very heated moment, can become very nervous.
hmm
There's a certain kind of, and it's an
like a
earnest, careful,
walking on.
careful. It's like an earnest
Hmm.
nervousness that comes
Hmm.
from nobody wanting to get. Dr. Brittany Cooper
Mm.
um, in her amazing books talks about how,
You've introduced me to her.
yeah, she's incredible, but she says, you have to understand that as a Black woman, when I'm around my white friends, I'm always kind of waiting for the moment when they're going to say something so hurtful that they're going to hurt me. Like there's this sense of hurting. And I know that, as a white woman trying to not do that, there's also a sense of like, God, let me not say the wrong thing. Somehow Azure and I have just gotten past that very quickly. And and it's just a very raucous, free, and I think I can only speak for myself, but I think that there's maybe some good mutual healing in that, to be able to really have a friend that you can be free with at the same time as caring immensely about these issues and tackling them in a very real way.
For
So
sure.
to joke about it is not to dismiss it. It's to say the world is dangerous, but we too are safe.
Yeah.
Like we too are safe within a dangerous
Yep.
world. And I value that enormously. Oh shit, Ebony Janice is on.
Oh,
Hi, Ebony Janice.
I haven't even been looking at the comments, Liz. I'm like, so you're better at this. So you just keep like shouting out the comments when you see good ones, and I'll just keep listening to you. Waha! I did see that one. Oh, good. I love Azure, and I feel that from it, and I feel like there is a piece that she just brings to the friendship that of just that she makes me feel comfortable, and I feel at ease with her, and I hope she feels that with me. But I think that's a gift of hers to make people feel at ease around them, or around her. I love that. I think that's great. I wanted to ask you too about your sister. So I'm a little sister. And I am fascinated. I write a lot about family and relationships, especially mother, daughter, sister. And I'm fascinated with sisters. And I think it's really interesting that the two of you are both brilliant writers. Her Book of Boy is brilliant. She won the Newbery Honor. And I know that she influenced, maybe not your writing, I don't know, but your creativity when you were young. You guys played in the fertile landscape of her imagination. But I haven't heard in your adult years, do you two have like a writing influence on each other? Do you ever do any of that together? Do you talk about that with each other? I'm curious if there's anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to preface it. So my sister's name, everybody, is Catherine Gilbert Murdoch. And if you've got kids or you're a teacher,
Glennon's
oh,
here.
there's Glennon Doyle. Hi, Glennon. I love your face too. Wow, everyone's sort of showing up at this party. It's so great.
It's a good one.
My sister is the single biggest creative influence on my life because she was the first.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot imagine a universe in which I could have become a writer without her. She's 3 years older than me. Our circumstances of growing up were unusual.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up on a small family Christmas tree farm. We didn't have other siblings. We didn't have neighbors. We lived out in the country. We didn't have kids.
You guys like sewed your own clothes, right?
Well, yeah, honestly,
kid.
like my parents were kind of like, they had this goal, which was to create, well, they wanted us to be as ruggedly self-sufficient as possible because that's who they are. So my mom and dad, they grew all their own food. My mom sewed our clothes. We had animals. We had a lot of responsibilities. A lot was expected of us. We were expected because my mom grew up in this kind of climate. She grew up on a big family farm in the 1950s in Minnesota, hard work where like children really were born to be farmhands. Like you had as many kids as you could because you needed them as labor.
Do the work, right?
Yeah, and you were given an enormous responsibility at an early age. So it wasn't quite as serious as that for us, but it was far more than any of the kids I grew up with. My sister and I were given basically a 19th century agrarian upbringing. And my parents didn't have any media in the house. They were almost like, you'd think that they were part of a religious sect, but my sister always jokes that we were like a religious sect, but with only one religious leader and one follower, and it was my dad and my mom. They had their own way of doing things, and there was very little outside influence. We didn't have a TV, we didn't have record player, we didn't have we had books, and my sister is fucking genius. She is so brilliant. She has one of the most brilliant minds I have ever encountered anywhere in my entire life. And from early childhood, she created the worlds in which we lived. We didn't have we couldn't draw from television. We couldn't draw from she made it. She made it up in her head. Yeah. She made it up based on the things that she was reading. So she would create these worlds where based on stuff that she was reading, she was reading a book about the Cave Twins. I don't know if you remember that series, like some old series.
I don't.
Children's book, but she was reading the Cave Twins, but she would also be reading a biography of Franklin Delano Roosevelt for young readers. So she would create a world where we were cave twins and we had a pet, a pet dinosaur, but also the dinosaur had polio because
Oh,
she was
I
reading
love
about like she
that.
would integrate everything. So it's like a dinosaur in a
So good.
wheelchair because she was interested in wheelchairs because of like it was just this
I love that.
amazing, fertile, creative imagination. And all of my imagination came from her imagination. And she started writing at a very early age, and all I did was imitate her.
Oh, I know all
And
about that.
yeah, that's it,
That's what you
and
do with your big sisters.
she wrote like she would write books. We would write and publish books. We were doomed to become writers. We would write and publish books, and all kids do that. Like they print like they
Yes.
draw the book and they
Yep.
put staples on it and they make a
Yep.
book with their name on it. But on the
Yep.
backs of our books are like we drew author photos and we wrote
Oh,
quotes
I
from
love
the New York
that.
Times. We had quotes
I
from like
love
Gore Vidal. We
Catherine's New
were
York
little
Times
authors. We were
bestseller.
little authors.
I love that so much.
And so she went on to academia. We had different creative paths because
Right.
she always loved fantasy.
Hmm.
And I was never so much into fantasy. So in her middle years, she read all the dragon books, and I never read all the dragon books. I was more into like
Right.
Jane Eyre. And then I got very serious. She got into high school, and the kind of books that she loved, she caught on that they were not books that were respected.
Yeah.
Because nobody's assigning the dragon books in high
Yeah.
school. They're assigning
Uh-huh.
Hemingway and Faulkner, and I happened to love Hemingway and Faulkner, and she didn't. So she went on to a career in academia, and then later in life, after she'd had her kids, she started writing young adult novels, which are brilliant, all of them. Her name again is Catherine Gilbert
This
Murdoch.
I have right here.
The
This
Book of
book,
Boy. You
so
guys,
so good. It has one of my
so
favorite
good.
lines I have ever read in it. You know how you have those books and you read one line and you're like, that is you've read this obviously.
Read
And
it.
read it, read it, loved it. You're like, we acted this out as children. I was boy.
Totally. That's the most Catherine book of all her books.
I love it. She has a line in there. I wrote it down here because I wanted to bring it up. But I love it because so there's this author, Laura Munson, and she's a mentor of mine, and she talks about the holy mundane and just like the things that you can say a line about the simplest everyday thing, but it has the most power and it's holy. And she's talking about Secundus. There's this pilgrim in the book, and he's talking to Boy, and Boy is telling him about this. The woman that took care of him, Milady, that she died, and he's like heartbroken because she didn't get to have a last confession, and she's in hell now. And he had told Secundus about his life with her, and that she took care of him and she cut his hair and all those things. And the pilgrim says to the boy, he says, she could in no way be a sinner. His face softened. She cut your hair. And that for me, I was like, oh, I'm in. And if there's a line like that, and there's not always in every book, I'm like, I'm in all the way. You have me till the end, and you have me for your next book too.
I will pass word along to her. But to answer your question about how we still influence each other,
yes.
Catherine is my final reader. She's not my first reader because I'm scared of her.
I know that.
With that, this advice to anybody who's writing and sharing their work with people, you have to choose who reads your work in the right order so that you don't get crushed by their responses. And I call it the concentric circle of reveal. So the very first people to read your book, or the very first person to read your book, has to be the kindest, gentlest people in your life. This is how I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend Cheryl is always my first read because basically Cheryl's version of my reading my book. She's like, it's perfect. I love it. You're perfect. I love you.
Yeah. Everything you do.
That's what you need.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, great. Okay. So now that then that helps me grow one little level of skin. And then I take it out to another person who's a little bit more critical. And then another person who's a little bit more critical. But if you bring your raw book to, somebody who's very intense and very critical, it can be too much to take. It still just doesn't have any skin on it. So Catherine is my final reader. Once all my other readers have read it and I've made the book as good as the world beyond Catherine can get it.
Yes.
I get it as far as I'm capable of getting it. This is pre-handing it into my publisher. So the last person to read it before I send it to my editor is my sister. And she will, when it comes back, it's like, notes and margins. This goes over here, like she's so, so good. She's such an intricate editor.
Yeah.
And then in terms of how I influence her work, I don't have the skill. As you know, I can't spell. I don't particularly understand grammar. What I am is a very good storyteller. And I have an intuitive sense of the pacing of a story and where the next, if it's stepping stones, where the next stepping stone wants to be.
Right.
And so I'm a really good macro reader. I'm not the last person who should read your book. I'm the first one. Because first of all, I'll be really loving and encouraging, and I'll tell you that you're great.
You'll be
and
gentle.
then secondly, I'll take a look at the whole big piece of it. And so I won't be able to break down sentence by sentence, but I'll be able to say, this is what I did with Rhea when she wrote Hardly Loco. She gave me the first draft, and I said, okay, your book begins on page 75. So all of this that you just did here is just the runway leading up to actually getting the start on it, which is the case of so many books, that the first 50 or 75 pages can just be dropped because the writer's getting their confidence and they're getting airborne.
For sure.
And this goes here, and you don't need this, and drop this. And like, I can do big, I'm like Tom Cruise. I can, whatever show that movie that was where he's moving big things around on it. Yeah, I'm like, it's like I look at the book as though it's a game of Risk, and I'm moving armies around continents. My sister looks at the book with a jeweler's loop, and that's also the difference between us personally. But we do really rely on each other.
But what a compliment, though. That's a good compliment to each other. Oh, I love that. I love that. I have three big sisters and a brother, and an older brother. And my oldest sister, I was very nervous to show her my stuff so I show my mom first, who's like, my mom believes I should have been a model, a singer, in a band. I play no instruments. Like, that's who you show first. Who will just be like, you're the best. And then my oldest sister, I was really nervous to show, because she's the type that will be like, oh, that sentence is terrible. This one's good. And she'll just be honest, but she's been a big support to me. But you need those layers.
Look, if you guys don't take away anything else from this conversation, if your writers take away this, the person who says to you, let me see your work, I'm brutally honest. First of all, just don't. We don't
need brutal anything.
Anybody who advertises themselves as being brutally honest, what they're telling you, what they're promising you is that they will brutalize you. That is a promise that they are making.
Yeah.
What they are saying is, I cannot wait for the chance to brutalize you. So be careful. And a lot of times the dangerous thing about people, if your relationships with brutally honest people, is that lots of times they tell you that you need them because they're the only ones who will tell you the real truth. Also not true.
Right. Yeah.
Also not true. Lots of people actually have the capacity to give really good, thoughtful advice without drawing blood. So yeah, just be careful. It's a really vulnerable thing to create. Like the one semester that I spent teaching writing at the University of Tennessee, I was such a hall monitor in that room about not allowing people to brutalize each other. I had very strict rules about it from the very beginning. And I was like, this is not cage fighting. And if you do that in this room, you are out of this room. Like, this is a temple of incredible vulnerability. And anybody who comes in here and is courageous enough to show their work needs to be treated tenderly, honestly, but tenderly.
I agree. And I totally agree. And I think that when people are brutal, I don't know that I know any secure, really comfortable people that are also just brutal. I think it usually comes from some insecurity of their own. You need honesty. Like my oldest sister, she will be, she's very kind, but she will be honest with me when I'm asking for that, and then also constructive and helpful. Just make sure you're
ready.
I know.
You ask for it.
I had my mom, and then I had my best friend who also just thinks anything you do, and then I had her. So yes, but I think that's great. I think you have to have your kind of layers of people. I love that. So Liz, you talk about, I mentioned you being the life coach that everybody wants to have, and you talk about full body yeses. So can you explain what that is to people, and can you also tell us the last time you had a full body yes?
So a lot of us, the way that we treat our body, first of all, we often will treat it like an enemy, or we will treat it like this is the analogy I often think of. We'll treat it like it's a broomstick upon which there's a jar with your brain in it. And the only job of the body is to carry the brain from place to place, because that's the most that's the most important part of your life, you know. And so this thing is just this machine to get this thing into different locations, right? And it's like, all right, it's like a car you're driving around, a Segway that you're using to get from place to place. And there's this mistaken understanding that your greatest intelligence is here. This is not necessarily fact. Your body has an enormous amount of intelligence. It's older. The body is older than the brain, right? The body, the great story that I think illustrates this is that the body has all sorts of wisdom, knows how to heal. It knows things intuitively that are far beyond the mind's capacity to know.
It's like when you feel things here rather than you don't feel them here. You know, you have your knowing here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a billions of years in progress, a piece of magnificent evolution. It's got all sorts of skills. You know, if you break your femur in half, the largest bone in the body, if it's properly set, you'll be fine in 6 weeks. It'll heal. You know, if somebody tells you that you're stupid when you're 7 years old, you'll feel that for the rest of your life. Your brain doesn't have the capacity to heal that the body has, right? The body's brilliant. You know, so the body knows a whole bunch of stuff. And Martha Beck puts this really well, where she says, walking around the world without checking in with your body about whether something is okay or not okay, it's as if you've got this amazing machine and you're not using it. It's as if somebody has handed you the newest, with all the bells and whistles, thinnest, slimmest, most beautiful Apple MacBook Air. And they're like, here, I brought you this tool. And you're like, thanks. And you use it as a placemat.
That's really good.
Like, I'm just like, and you're like, and you're using an abacus while you're eating your dinner off the MacBook Air, right? So the body doesn't lie. The body doesn't lie. And we are taught to lie. And Glennon writes about this a ton in Untamed and talks about this, especially
read it
women.
and loved
We're taught
it.
to lie. We are taught to say things that we don't mean. We're taught to say yes when we mean no. We're taught what we're supposed to desire. We're taught all sorts of stuff. But the body actually can't be bullshitted. The mind can be, and we can bullshit our own minds really, really effectively and do so all the time. But the body cannot be, it just doesn't tell lies. It just doesn't. And so a full body yes for me is when from head to toe, I see something, there's an idea that I have, there's an inspiration, there's an invitation, and all of a sudden I'm like, whew, and it just feels like this ignition from head to toe. And I'm like, oh, that's a full body yes. And I actually like have this little patch on the top of my head that gets almost like neuropathy when I get really excited about something. And it's not inside my brain. It's actually just like on my scalp.
On the surface.
Yeah. And it's a sort of like it's the litmus test for, is this great? You know, or am I in truth? Like sometimes people will say something that's so incredibly true that I'll get this like shiver like up my whole back of my.
That was a rhea moment for me of full body and like on the surface. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's it. And I try as much as I can to navigate my life based on that. So
which is
just
hard to do.
It gets easier if you get practiced about it, and it gets easier the older you get and the less you care.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I also have full body no's, and a full body no, it doesn't even need to have a rational explanation. Somebody will drop into my inbox, sent there by a friend of a friend of a friend, who wants something from me, or is inviting me to something, and I will read the first 2 lines of it, and I'll be like, ooh, and I'll literally. Like sometimes I will literally do this and I'm like, nope. And I just delete it without even responding. This is a gift that I gave to myself in my 40s, was the gift of deleting messages without responding to them.
And you are a people pleaser in your nature, right? You're a people pleaser. Because that's very hard to, I'm a huge people pleaser and I feel like I owe everyone and the world everything. If they ask of me, I owe it to them. And you and Glennon are helping me on that way to, not letting that
Jill,
kill
I'm
me.
not a people pleaser in my nature, and neither are you. We're kind, but our nature is to be honest. What we are is we were trained. We were trained to be people pleasers. It's not in our nature. Our actual nature is what our body responds to, right? So
that's so interesting. I haven't thought of it that way. I have always termed it, oh, that's who I am.
you're kind, you're lovely, you're generous. I shouldn't speak for you. I'm kind, I'm lovely, I'm generous, but people pleasing was trained into me. And it's how I figured out from a very early age. I thought it's what I needed to do, and I thought it's what I thought it was a survival tactic. And like all survival tactics, it's
Right.
good until it
Until it isn't.
metastasizes, you know. But now, yeah, I just like, God, I say no all day now. I actually kind of get a little like tingle of joy from it lately. And
I
and
love
and
that.
I'll pass this along to you guys about inboxes, because a lot of people have inbox anxiety and email
Mhm.
anxiety. And I probably just say inbox and some of you start to feel anxiety. Like, oh fuck,
For sure.
like they're sitting in there.
Hmm.
I had this realization, and I've spoken about this before, but the day that Rhea was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic and liver cancer and told that she had 6 months to live, and I was told that the most important person who has ever existed in my life and the one person who I cannot live without was going to die. I was in a different city than she was, and I got on a plane to come home to be with her. And in the airport, I opened up my laptop because there were some people I needed to tell about this information. And I looked at my inbox, and my inbox looked the way it looked for most of my life, which was packed. And it was packed with basically my way that I used to do email was there were emails I would respond to immediately, emails I would respond to within a few days, and emails that are going to sit in my inbox until the fucking sun explodes. And they're just
Because you
going to
cannot
sit
delete
there
them. That would be
because I
unkind.
just don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how, I'm like, and every time I look at it, I'm like, and on that day in the airport, I deleted everything in my inbox. I just deleted it. And I was like, and I suddenly got it. And I've never ungotten it since
Well,
then.
and you're sitting in a moment of what really matters with
Exactly.
like that.
I
And so
was
it's
like,
just like it puts it
not
in
just what,
perspective.
but who matters,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
one of the things that we're trained to believe somehow is that we're supposed to make every single person feel like they are the most important person in the world. That is insanity. They aren't. They might be to somebody else, but they
But
aren't to
not to
me.
you.
There's a
Yeah.
couple people in my life who are the most important people in my world, and there's only a few of them, and everybody else is important in God's eyes and important in the eyes of their family, and I will treat them with as much respect as I can. But if I go around making it my mission to make sure that every single person feels that I love them as much as I love Rhea, then I don't get time to love Rhea,
Hmm.
So no. And I deleted it, and I've treated myself, and because I realized the reason I had not responded to those emails for months was not because I didn't have time, it's because I didn't care. I didn't
Hmm.
care about that person. I didn't care about their project. I didn't care about their complaint. I didn't care about them.
But you
And for
couldn't
10
delete
years,
it
just deleted
because,
it.
but
I
you
didn't
couldn't before because
I
why?
thought I
Because
had to care. So I was trapped in this thing. I was like
so you were bad if
paralyzed
you
by having
deleted
to
it.
care about everybody,
Yeah.
and this is um, and the fact that like this is why I don't have an assistant. I don't have staff. I don't have anything like that in my life.
Which is
I
kind of
don't need
wild for
it.
your,
I
because
don't
you're
need
like, no,
it.
I've got my,
I
I
don't need
can
it
usher
because I
people in and
delete
out.
90% of my emails.
And
If
then
you
who needs
all
an assistant?
if you all deleted 90% of your emails too, you wouldn't need an assistant,
Ugh,
right? Like,
that
I
makes
just
me
don't
feel
call
so
people.
good.
I'm like, sorry, I don't call people back. I don't need to pay somebody to be polite for me to people who stepped into my life who I did not invite. So the way I see my inbox now is that my inbox is an extension of my home. And if I came down one morning and I found 60 people sitting at my table expecting for me to give them breakfast, I would call the police. I'm
Right,
like, get out of
right.
my house. I didn't invite
What are
you.
you doing?
I
Right.
didn't invite you. You're not
It's a
invited.
really
But
good way to
but
put it.
I wake up every morning and I find a whole bunch of people in my inbox who I didn't invite. And it's not my responsibility to politely send them away. I get to just delete it.
Well,
This is the biggest difference between me at 50 and me at 30.
I love that. I love that. Well, and it's like I said when I welcomed you here, I was saying, welcome to our Keller home. And we've only had this small amount of time of doing a big portion of our life online in these in emails and internet and on, like IG and all these places and these things. And it's a new thing for us as humans to navigate. And I think we have to understand, like your inbox, that's part of your home. Like, so don't let it be filled with intruders. Don't let it be
That's
filled
it.
with, I think that's clicking with me. I think that's
You
important. I
get to
love that.
choose. You get to choose who is in your life at what level. And a lot of my friends just know like there's going to be times where they're not going to hear from me. Like I don't respond to every text.
Yeah.
Glennon doesn't respond to every text.
I
Glennon
hear
doesn't
her say
respond to
that.
every text from me. Like Glennon
And
and I
she
are
loves
dear
you.
friends. She loves me, and I know
That
she loves me. And when we first met, she said, "I'm a really bad friend. You're not going to hear from me. I never text people back." And I said, "I do not require you to check in. Like, I
right.
will see you when I see you. My heart knows already that it loves you. We're good. This is not like nothing needs to be proven." Look at Glennon. Nope. This is the most
I
I've
love
communicated with
that.
Glennon in a long time.
I'm so
But
glad I can help facilitate that.
because Glennon's priorities are Abby and reading and locking her door and not letting people into her actual house. Like, in order to be sane, you get to choose. You get to choose who, what, and at what level people are in your life, or else you will never have time for what matters. And I also want to make clear that what matters doesn't just necessarily mean, I mean, I could make a bullshit excuse and say I delete all those emails and I don't respond to people because I'm writing. Most of the time, I'm not writing. I'm sitting in my bathtub eating popcorn, watching The Crown. That's my
But
priority.
that's what matters right then.
That's what matters. That's why I have a nice life. That's why I'm a happy person.
Well, I think we feel we have to have excuses that are put on by something else. I'm sorry, this other thing is what I have to do because it's never good enough to say the thing
No.
that I want right now is actually above what you want because we can't do that. So we have to be like, somebody else really wants something from me. Sorry, and we don't need to do that,
Yeah.
which I love. I love that. I think that's brilliant. Do you know Jane Mount from the Ideal Bookshelf? Have you ever heard of her?
Mm-mm.
She's, what do I have here of hers? Okay, so she does like this kind of art. This is my planner, but she does this kind of art and it's so brilliant. I love her. I don't know her personally. I just love her. Your books are in a lot of her art. What it is she started her company and it's kind of blown up, but she started it with people's doing paintings of people's ideal bookshelf, like their canon, the books.
I do know
Do
who
you, do
she
you know
is.
her?
Yep.
Okay,
I do
so
know who
you
she is.
put
Yep. I do
only the
know her
books
name.
that you. Okay, sorry, we had a little lag. Are you there, Liz?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
good,
here.
good, good. Okay, so she so yeah, she does these paintings of people and they're just ideal bookshelves. So she got me thinking about, okay, what's on my ideal bookshelf? And on mine I have Charlotte's Jane Eyre, I have Emily's Wuthering Heights, and I have two of your books, one of which is Big Magic, which is in another book that she illustrated, Jane Mount. I'm sure it's on many people's ideal bookshelves. But when Big Magic was so inspiring to me because you're speaking to everybody and everybody is a creative and they can do this, but there's deep insecurity around creativity. And when we start out as writers in particular, I have felt, and I know other people have felt, you want like 10 steps to just do exactly what you did so that I can become you and then have an eat, pray, love outcome. And then, I'd like to follow that formula, but there is no 10 steps. That doesn't work that way. But what I have noticed is there is story, and there are, when you pay attention and you listen to people's stories, people you admire, how they got where they got. Malcolm Gladwell talks a lot about this in his 10,000 hours. And you can see little threads of common threads. And one, I think, is these kind of big magic moments that people have that are kind of unexplainable. They've worked hard. There's all these things, but they have these little moments that are just, I would just call them big magic, pivotal moments that got them where they are along the way. And I wanted to know what some of those or one of those has been for you in your writing career. And maybe it was really early on before your career started. I don't know.
I will tell you one. So, um, I got dumped so hard, like the kind that you don't think you're going to survive,
Mm-hmm.
when I was 22,
Mm.
23. No, I was 23. I got dumped a bunch of times, but I got
Was this
dumped.
the 23, the 24?
The worst dumping of my life happened when I was 23. Like, just like Ray used to say, kicked to the curb like a wet food stamp. Kicked to the curb.
Like a wet food stamp?
Yep.
That's so good.
Useless. Like, you can't even
Mm-hmm.
use this.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I love that.
And I was supposed to Oh yeah, Glenn and I got trashed.
I got dumped, Lizzie.
I got dumped. I got eviscerated, and I had like blown up my life to be with this guy, and we were supposed to move. We were going to move to. We'd saved up all our money. We were going to move to Portugal together, and
Ooh,
then
that's
one
a big.
day the pronouns changed. Have you guys ever had that happen in a relationship where instead of saying when we moved to Portugal, he started
Mm.
saying when we moved to
Yeah,
Portugal, and I was like, wait,
yeah,
what happened
huh.
to first person plural? Like,
Yeah.
what?
It's a really
Um,
sad and subtle way to do that.
and I didn't have any prospects, and I called everyone I knew except my parents because I knew like the last place in the world. My parents had always been very clear, don't ever come home. You are never welcome here again. You, we raised you to be ruggedly self-sufficient. Now go be
Oh,
ruggedly
I
self-sufficient.
love that. Oh my goodness.
And so it never occurred to me to go home to my family, but I called everybody that I knew in New York, and I was like, I don't have anywhere to go. Can I stay with you? And a bunch of people said no, because they were all 22 and nobody had homes,
No one had
nobody had
extra space.
anything,
Yeah.
But my dear friend Susan Freddie, who I still love with all my heart, um, told me I could come and stay on her couch for a month, which turned into 6 weeks. But I stayed on her couch and it must have been awful. She was living in a 1-bedroom apartment that had been turned into a 2-bedroom apartment. And she and her friend Lourdes like gave me the couch, which was just this sliver
So
in
the
the middle of
space
it.
was
And
just this big.
I was in their way, and I was crying all the time. Like it was
Very
just
sad.
one of the kindest things that anybody has ever done to me. Um, but I woke up one morning and I was like, I need to do something dangerous and bold because I felt sick. I was sick. I was a sick and suffering, brokenhearted love addict. And I was like, I need to do something. Um, I need to do something to like jack my life,
Hmm.
and I was like, I'm going to go get a job as a writer. And I'd never been published, but I'd been writing for years. So I only had one
Had you
friend who
thought about being like doing that as a career before, or that was just a
no,
thing?
I've been sending my stuff out to magazines to get published, but
Okay.
I thought I'm going to go get a job working at a magazine as a
Got it.
staff writer.
Got it.
I'm going to go get that job today. I'm going to go
Right.
do that. I'm going to go get a job and I had my only job experience was bartender and waitress, right? But I was like, I'm going to
Right.
go get a job at a magazine as a writer. That's what I'm going to do. And my friend Margaret, who I just quoted this week on Instagram with her brilliant line, when people aren't busy being the worst, they're the best. But my friend Margaret had been an intern at Spin Magazine 2 years earlier than that. And I called her up and I was like, can I go to Spin? Do you know anybody at Spin Magazine? Do you think I could go try to talk my way into a job? And she had worked as the personal assistant to Bob Guccione Jr., who was the editor in chief there. And she said, yeah, go see Bob. That was it. So I walked into the offices of Spin Magazine. And I remember going up in the elevator and what was that first, oh my God, noun retrieval syndrome. This happens when we get older. Okay, I can't remember anybody's name or anything. Anyway,
That's okay.
Reservoir Dogs. I had just seen
Mm.
Reservoir Dogs that week, which will put you in the timing of like early 90s.
Yeah.
And there's a line where like one of the guys is trying to pump himself up and he keeps saying, I'm a Beretta, I'm a shark, I'm a Beretta, I'm a shark. I got in the elevator to go up to Spin Magazine and I was literally physically shaking and I was like, I'm a Beretta, I'm a shark, I'm a Beretta, I'm a shark. And I walked in and like instantly there was a receptionist and I was like, hi, I'm here to see Bob Guccione Jr. No appointment, no resume, no anything. And I talked my way through through three humans until I got into his office
That
using
does not surprise me about you.
using only my friend Margaret's as a sword. I was like, and I kept saying Margaret's name as if she were
Was
anybody.
like,
She had been an unpaid college intern 2 years earlier
you know,
doing
Margaret, the
filing,
intern.
and I kept saying, you guys remember Margaret? You remember Margaret? She used
Margaret.
to work here. Remember, like, anyway, I just kept
I love
acting
that
like I was
confidence.
supposed to be there. And I went, and I finally got in there. And I had met him at a Christmas party that Margaret had invited me to 2 years earlier. And I was like, hey, Bob, you remember me? We met at this Christmas. And he's like, no, I absolutely don't remember you.
Mhm.
But who are you? What are you doing here? And I said, I'm actually here to get a job. I'm a really good writer. And he said,
You
have you
weren't
had
wrong.
anything? he said, have you had anything published? And I said, absolutely not. But what I do have here are some photocopies of some of my literary short stories. So I think I should write for your music magazine. And anyway, he was like, you know what? It was the weirdest thing. This is a big magic moment. He said, my assistant, one of the assistants you just talked your way through, is leaving this afternoon on a ski vacation. Do you want to start this afternoon and just answer phones at my desk? And I said, totally. So for 3 days, I sat at Bob Guccione Jr.'s desk. I had never worked in an office. I was terrible. He's spoken about this in interviews. He was like, she was the worst. Like, I didn't know how to, the phone terrified me. It had all these buttons. There were actual Rolodexes because of the 90s. I didn't know how to use a word processor. But he let me sit there and he said, but she made me laugh. Like every time I walked by, I made him laugh. And at the end of the 3 days, he reached into his wallet and he gave me $200 American. And he said, it's been very nice having you work here. Good luck to you.
So no writing job here.
Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate that. And I remember my brother-in-law saying to me, wow, that was a really bold thing that you did. And I said, yeah. And I said, but he didn't remember me. And my brother-in-law said, he will next time. Next time he sees you, he'll remember you, because he'll remember that a lot of people say they want jobs, but not very many people like do that. He's not going to forget who you were. So fast forward. Then I got another bartending job and I worked as a bartender for 6 months. And then 6 months later, Esquire magazine blindly chose one of my, they pulled it out of the slush pile with no editor and they published one of my short stories. And this was back when they published fiction, and they made a big deal out of it because I was like only the second author that ever published fiction without an agent, unsolicited manuscript, whatever. They published the short story that was the title story of my later book, Pilgrims. But so here's the great part. Here's the big magic part. When the magazine came out, I wrote a note to Bob Guccione Jr. saying, see, Bob, I told you I was a fucking writer. You should have paid attention to me 6 months ago. And I sent it to him with my phone number. And the next day, the phone, I had it messengered. The next day, the phone rang and he said, I always knew you were going to make something of yourself. Do you want to come and write for Spin Magazine? And I spent the next 3 years writing for Spin Magazine. So all because I got dumped. Because I got dumped and my heart was broken and I was desperate and I had nothing to lose. I had no money. I had no prospects. And like, nothing to lose is sometimes, I don't ever want to be nothing to lose again, because it's really, really, I did actually say fucking writer, yes, to the person who asked. But yeah, nothing to lose is a great place to be sometimes, to project yourself forward when there's like, what did I have to be other than that? So that is what I did.
I love
so
that.
When you say the 10 steps, like when people say, how did you get to, like, and then I worked as a journalist for 10 years because I started it and Bob gave me a chance. He let me go on assignments and learn how to be a journalist on the job with no journalism degree. But there are no 10 steps, but every once in a while, you don't have to do it every single day, but every once in a while in your life, you have to do something that makes you want to throw up. It's so scary. Like, you just have to, like, you have to do, like, the amount of physical fear that I felt in that elevator going up and being like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm trying to talk my way into a job that I have no business. And it didn't work that day, but it worked. It actually kind of reset my brain, and then it worked 6 months later. That was a very long answer to your question, but I don't think I've ever told that story.
I love that so much. I haven't heard that, and I've listened to a lot of your stuff, like over a decade plus. I haven't heard that, and I love that. And what I love is that was your response to heartbreak, and I think that was the start of the big magic. And that, like, kind of just, because that's not how we typically, I don't know if that's how you always respond to heartbreak, but that's not the typical, like, you know what, I'm going to go do something so bold. It's like, that's not usually our response, but it was
to be clear, Jill, and just to make, to humanize the situation and make everybody feel, that was my partial response to heartbreak. The other half of my response to heartbreak was to literally have sex with everybody for the next couple of years and then marry the wrong person.
I've done the marry the wrong person thing too before. And yeah, it's not a great response to anything.
So I don't want you to think that it's all like I had it all sorted
when
out.
Liz gets heartbroken, she just goes and gets writer jobs. And no. But I love that. I love that that's the start of that. that big magic. I think that's so great. I don't know if IG is going to cut us off. Do they cut us off right now at an hour? I
Maybe.
I don't know how it works, but
We could go a little while longer.
well, I wanted to ask you about Simone, the Black Fairy godmother, your friendship with her, and I know she's got some big things they're doing. I mean, always on her Instagram. But can you tell people about her
Yes,
and then what she's got
absolutely.
going on this month?
Yes. And can you remind me, is her Instagram handle Black Fairy Godmother Official or the Black Fairy
I
Godmother
think it's
Official?
the. I'm gonna
Can
look real
somebody check
quick.
on that? Because I want to send you
It's
guys to the
the.
right people.
It's the
It's
Black
the.
Fairy godmother.
Yeah, so the Black Fairy Godmother at the Black Fairy Godmother. Everybody, please go follow her if you don't already follow her. She is
She's
extraordinary. You'll
the
see some people in the comments already saying how great she is.
yes, the
It's the.
Fairy godmother official.
And if you want to look her up, her name is Simone Gordon.
Hmm.
And she's one of the heroes of my life. She's one of these impossible people, like next level evolution, extraordinary people. She was a victim of domestic violence. She was a single mother with an autistic nonverbal son. She grew up in a lot of poverty, neglect, and abuse. She was homeless for a while with her child. She managed to pull herself up out of homelessness, and she was putting herself through nursing school. And then she started this program called the Black Fairy Godmother, where she started doing these um, every day, these tiny little fundraisers on social media to raise money for women who have immediate problems, like immediate, like they're about to be evicted, their electricity is about to go off, they're escaping a domestic. She works a lot with domestic violence survivors. They're
Hmm.
escaping a domestic violence situation and they need a roof over their head that night. Because
Right.
what she learned when she was in that situation is that while there are some excellent charities and government organizations to help with people who are in distress, they're bureaucratic. They take a long time, and there are people who need food for their kids
Today.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Like they need, like they have no heat in their house right now, and sometimes these almost heartbreakingly relatively small amounts of money for $900, like somebody's going to not get evicted, or they're going to be able to get their car fixed, and they're able to get to work and keep their job, or they're going to be able to get diapers for their kids, or pay for a medical bill. These are these margins. People who live on the margins of poverty. One thing, a broken muffler can send you into homelessness because you
Yeah.
can't get to your job and you can't, and so she looks out for those people, and she's got this big community now. I wish it were bigger, of people who show up in order to help out with these fundraisers that she does, and it's quite extraordinary. I would encourage all of you, like you can chip in on any given day. You can chip in $10, $15. She always makes these fundraisers, and she's doing adopt a family thing for Christmas.
Yes.
So definitely go to her site and check that out. There's information about that. But
And
the need is always there, and small amounts can help, and it's truly going right into the hands of people who need it.
and you chip in how? You
You go
DM
to
her,
the Black.
you
Yep, you go to her Instagram site,
Mhm.
and if you go to her bio, there's
Mhm.
you chip in there. She's got PayPal accounts and Venmo accounts, and she's got a team of volunteers who help to distribute the money and organize things. And anyway, she's phenomenal. So do not miss Simone Gordon and
I
the
agree.
Black Fairy Godmother. I post about it about once a month.
You're my introduction to her.
And yeah,
Wild fact.
introduce people to her as much as I can, and she's amazing. I'm glad that you're part of her team of angels.
Yeah, I think she's amazing, and what I think is really cool, we shouldn't have to need this, but it does. It makes it personal, because you'll see her pop. We've got this need, this mom, and then she's
I
like,
cannot get my ears in today. Go
oh,
ahead. Sorry.
no, you're okay. For some reason,
I
I'm like,
oiled
oh,
up my
check
ears
mine.
too much this morning. Okay.
You're okay. But you'll see a mom, her and her babies, they need heat. And then she's like, heat's on or lights are back on. Thank you.
By the end of the day,
By the
done.
end of the day.
Solved.
And I just got chills even just saying it because you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, I can have an impact. Okay. And it makes it, I just think she's genius. What she's,
Jill, the chills that you just got, that's a full body yes.
yes, it's ends
Yep.
here and it
That
tingles right
means
there.
that means like your body knows that this is right, this is good, this is more of what I want to be doing
Yep.
in life. This is the
Yep.
direction.
Can I say something about the full body yes? I had a full body yes when Azure told me you're going to do a live and it's going to be with Liz, and I was like, full body yes, and then I was like, full body fear. Oh no. Do you get that a lot or often
Yeah.
after your full body yeses?
In fact, expect it. Expect it because actually what happens is the body says yes and then the mind says no.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so it's and expect this if you're going to live a life of creativity or any kind of daring because um, your creative imagination and your body and your nature get some sort of an impulse that's like totally in keeping with what your spirit is and
Mhm.
what you want to be doing, and then fear shows up right on schedule. I don't even let it bother me anymore because I know I'm like 5 4 3 2 1 and here comes fear. Fear comes in because fear has only one job, and fear's job is to prevent us from doing things where fear does not know what the outcome is going to be. Has to because it has to. Fear has to assume that if you do anything where you don't know what the outcome is going to be, it's probably going to lead to your death. Which is why I was literally physically shaking in fear when I went up the elevator to Spin Magazine that day, because my fear thought I'm going to die. Like this is so scary, I'm going to die. Of course, I'm not going to. Like the worst that could happen is that they would call security, But um, so just now I get it. I'm like, and then you just have to have a very loving conversation with your fear, very gentle, and say, you're doing a great job being fear. You're awesome at that. Way to go. And I'm going to continue to do this thing anyway.
I love that. And then I suggest just put Rhea's words in your head and just repeat them after that.
There, that'll always do it. Jill, hey, you've done brilliantly at this interview, my dear. You're like a
Thank
pro, seasoned pro.
Oh, thank you. Well, you that brought me comfort that I knew this is a great conversationalist. If I just blow this, she'll carry it. That's just who she is. She'll do it. So it's been so lovely to chat with you. It's been a real honor for me. Is there anything else you've wanted to talk about before we go?
I just want to say hi to everybody and say you're doing great. And don't let anybody, especially not me. I've been saying this a lot during COVID, and I think Glennon would agree. Don't let anybody um, craft shame you or art shame you, or make you think that you're supposed to be really productive right now or that you're supposed to be taking advantage of this time to don't ever ever not ever but definitely not during the
No.
pandemic. This is a really difficult time. I haven't even been writing. There's just a lot going on in the world. It's a lot of distraction. If you are writing, great. If you're not, you can do it tomorrow. Don't worry. Like just don't ever let anybody shame you for where you are in your life at any given time ever.
I love that. And you've said that always. And I feel like that was at the heart of Big Magic in your Big Magic podcast. And it's a lovely message and it's something that means a lot to people out there just clinging to any amount of cheerleading they can. We need hype men, and you're a good hype man for all of us.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Thank you so much, Liz. We
Thanks,
love
guys.
having you here. Thank you
Thank
guys
you. It
for
was lovely
coming.
chatting with you.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
Jill. See you later. Bye.
See you. Hopefully, I know how to turn this off.